The aha curve is something that I put together out of exasperation when I was working in Stockholm back in about 2015. And the slides after this will help explain why I was getting exasperated. I was working with consultants and they didn't understand bell curves apparently. And in yeah, like I said, I was a little exasperated. I just went up to the whiteboard, thought for a second, and drew this picture and said, look, you got people who are struggling, people who are going through the motions. You get to this point where they get to aha, and then they start to perform. And ultimately, through um, good coaching and mentoring, you'll get them to high performance. And I walked them through the difference between what I meant for hands-on and hands-off. And please understand, hands-on does not mean micromanagement. And if you have confused it for micromanagement, you have misunderstood drastically what we've been trying to teach you. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen and that people won't fall back into their comfort zones, but the Scrum Master, the Agile Coach, the Enterprise Agile Coach should at least raise the issue and say, hey, we're seeing micromanagement. What's your plan, Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Scrum Master, to get the team back on track and to have the stakeholders or the product owner to have them stop micromanaging? Okay? Or if it's the Scrum Master themselves, then you take them out back to the woodshed, have a come to Jesus meeting, and then let them come back in the building, maybe. So, one way or the other, you need to be able to understand. Hands on does not mean micromanagement, and hands off does not mean laissez faire, do whatever you want. Okay? So, and it's the same for top down, bottom up. The agile purists prefer only the organic bottom up way of scaling agile. I believe that there needs to be a top down as well as a bottom up approach. So the same thing. So the same thing in using the aha curve. It's the same thing. I think we had two teams that were struggling, and we got one of the teams to move up to going through the motions. And of the going through the motions team, or we reduced it from 2 to 1. So we got one of the teams to go up. And on the motions team, we reduced it from 7 to 5. So two of the teams went up to performing. On the performing, we went up to 9. And the high performing, they went up by 1. It was something like that. And so the aha curve moved over to the left, and we had more teams that were on the right than on the left. So you don't have to have everybody with, okay? And it's the same idea for any kind of transformation that you're going to do. This is still valid. You don't have to have everybody with in order to be able to do the transformation. You only need a portion of the people with to get exponential doubled results within a relatively short period of time when you look at the big scheme of things. So this was for me a powerful aha because it's both the law of averages and the flaw of averages. Okay, and there's a lot of people who have done a lot of presentations on the flaw of averages, but if you understand the power of the law of averages, especially when you're working from the program level and up, you'll go a long way and you'll add tremendous value to the organization with which you are working. This is one of my favorite pictures of the 4 pictures in this series. It's like the plate spinner at the circus, and you have all of these competing demands that you have to balance, and you have to keep the plate spinning. You need to keep your sponsors happy, your vendors happy, the CEO, the CFO, your team, the customer, all the stakeholders. And this is actually what you have to do to achieve flow. And this plate spinning occurs at the individual level, it occurs at the team level, it occurs at the product program process level, it occurs at the portfolio and executive levels. Everybody's spinning a ton of plates. And so you want to keep those plates spinning. You want to be able to effectively manage each of these areas and develop the critical mass that you need in order to succeed. And so the next slide on doing the AHA curve in all four boxes helps you understand a little bit better the idea of these plates. And in fact, the 4-hour presentation that I have for on um, using flow to do transformations or transforming using flow. That 4 hours of presentation is 17 plates that you have to keep spinning in order to successfully transform, scale, roll out, and govern an agile organization, especially if you're coming over from a traditional or classic background and moving towards agile. So this is a really good picture for that. And as I shared in the transformation slide deck, the reason that the journey is long is because you have to go through individual transformations, team transformations, transformations for the product, program, process, line management area, and transformations for the portfolio level and up to the directors and VPs and executives and C level that are leading the organization. And so transformations take time. This last picture in the series really reflects everything that you have to be able to do in order to be able to break through the silos, break through the organizational barriers and blockers and impediments that you're going to run into. You need to be a battle-scarred, experienced individual in order to be able to do this at every level in the organization. And so we reflect that in the next slide, the key leadership tools used by each of the four lenses. So in the individual box, you'll see that we use the 4R model primarily, but we also use the 4D model there. We use VSBT. We use the flow friction analysis even there. And so there's a ton of tools that we use, but these are primary. In the team and product program process boxes or lenses, we use the 4D model, the define, distill, deliver, and drive, because we're working with groups and teams and programs and portfolios of individuals. And so we'll use those, and you still use the 4R with each of the people individually, but we also use primarily 4D with the teams. We shift our focus up to the team level. And then up in the organization box, we have the infinity symbol where it's when to wear which hat. You know, the agile purists will say, oh, well, you know, managers, they're the root of all evil, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The reality is that's just simply not true. The reality is that as a really good enterprise level agile coach and mentor and trainer, you need to know when to wear your agile hat and when to wear your management consulting hat. And if you don't have any management consulting skills, you are going to get wiped out. You need to understand that when you get into those upper layers, they speak a different language. They speak the language of leadership, not the language of management. And there's politics there. And that level of politics is a blood sport. Ted and I used to joke about, hey, it's like the octagon in the MMA world of mixed martial arts, where you throw two people in the ring and one person walks out of the ring more or less alive, and the other one, well, maybe or maybe not. And so politics is a blood sport, and if you're going to be able to work and move in those areas, you need to understand the language, you need to know when to wear which hat, and it's really important to be able to have all of the skills together in a complete package. And so it really does put a huge level of requirements on you, and using flow, we can help you achieve superhero status and help deliver results to the leadership where they say, oh, wow, that was great. How did you do that? And so this is what it's all about. And we'll go through a little bit more of the key leadership tools by Lens in the next slide. So here's the key leadership tools that I would use by Lens, the primary ones. For the individual, you'll see that it's the 4R model with right truth, right values, attitudes, right actions, right results, with the individual's vision and their spirit in the center. For the Agile team, for them, I would use primarily the 4D model and overlay that over Scrum, Agile, Lean, Kanban, whatever they're doing, in order to raise it to higher levels of performance. The same thing for the product, program, process box up there in the upper right. I would do the exact same thing with them using the 4D model. And for the enterprise level, I would be using both hats in dealing with the executives, both helping them come up the Agile consulting curve and helping them build operational excellence into the Agile organization that they're building. So that at the point when they get to the point there where they need to do creative destruction, they actually have the tools in their hand for all of the boxes to be able to go, okay, here's where we need to make a decision point. Here are the trends. Here's what's happening. And this is the direction that we should go. And if we have all these parts in place, you have a pretty good chance of having a successful rollout, a successful scaling, a successful transformation, and hopefully even a successful way to start to govern an agile organization as they're transforming from the traditional classic waterfall style over into an agile lean type of organization. For the reporting upstream, I prefer burn-up charts as compared to burn-down charts. Most executives are going to want to see burn-up charts because they don't like to see graphs that are pointing downward, because that usually means they're losing money. So they like to see graphs that are going upwards. And the reason that I really like burn-up charts is then I can put a t-shirt sized estimate of the backlog above it, and by doing trend lines, I can start to predict when either a project or a program is going to be completed. We use team health checks, radars, the AHA curve, the flow friction analysis for reporting upstream. We still use product roadmaps for reporting purposes. We'll use the PMO biweekly meetings or monthly meetings, depending on how the organization's set up. And then for the ATG, the Agile Transformation Group or Agile Transformation Team, you would have monthly meetings for the senior executives involved in that team. And then you'll have quarterly meetings that involve everybody, including the C-suite. And so there's a double cadence there for that. And here's some real world results. And we're going to go through this pretty much area by area. It's good to remember that your team burn-up charts or burn-down charts are basically for team use only. They're not really for the managers, and you have to train your managers. Look, this is to help the teams improve, and we really don't need your help in that area. We don't need your support in that area. And if you read these, then you need to read them over time and in context before you guys start to having any kind of feedback or input to the team burn-up charts. But in general, the team burn-up charts are for team use only. It's to help them improve, to get better sprint by sprint by sprint. Okay. Where it gets interesting for the managers and line managers, program managers, portfolio directors, managers, and above to the C-suite are these three graphs that I have over here in the other two boxes. You have a program level report that's project by project, and then the program level report that is consolidated for all the projects within that program. And then the portfolio becomes a consolidated view for a specific portfolio for the organization. Now, this slide is very similar to the last slide, except that in the project program corner up here in the corner, typically product is what we would have there. I just wanted to highlight that I added a couple extra things in this upper right corner. One is the program product owner board, and that's really the release roadmap. And it gives you a chance to look at cross dependencies, integration items, and it gives you that bigger picture, longer release view. And this is something that the Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, product owners, product managers, and even enterprise Agile coaches will help you do. And so you'll notice that we had this product owner board, and then the product roadmap, and then how are we reporting this over a number of sprints for the particular project or development effort on which we're working. So this is more or less the same as the last slide as far as the reporting items go in the three boxes, whether it's the current sprint, over sprints over time, or projects completed. It's the same idea. And so we're just consolidating the pictures as we go. But we've added a few additional items in there in order to help the teams and the stakeholders and everyone in the process. They can walk up to it, they can look at it, and they go, oh, I get that. That's awesome. And so this is just a way for us to be able to make it big, make it visible, and make it so that we can talk to each of those tools with the stakeholders in a way that they look at it and go, oh, I get that. So it's a very useful communication tool, probably a better practice or good practice heading towards best practice. And almost without exception, I use all of these days as an enterprise coach, working with the Agile coaches and Scrum Masters, product owners, and all the other stakeholders. So I just wanted to include this and just let you know, hey, there's even more in the background than what we're showing in this particular presentation. Once again, Dilbert just delivers. I love it. The pointy hair boss is telling Dilbert, hey, I'm giving you another software project to work on at the same time as your main project. And Dilbert's like, that will ruin my flow. It will take too long to reset my brain when I switch between projects. Pointy hair boss asks him, have you tried working longer hours without extra pay? Dilbert's like, yes, I have. And there's a couple beautiful things in this picture. First, personal heroics are not sustainable. If you are working 60 to 80 hours a week, or even over 50 hours a week, the studies have already shown that your quality will be going down dramatically. So this is very typical in the consulting world where people are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week because they have to stay ahead of the competition. In the end, it's not sustainable. They're going to burn themselves out, and they could even literally die by working too much. It's not sustainable. And the other thing that's in this picture that's just beautiful is the concept of task switching. There are so many scholarly articles out there about task switching that just switching between two tasks, the reset time is measured in like tens of minutes, and it's very difficult to switch back and forth. It's like being a guy on the battleship who's a gunner, and you've got two airplanes coming at you at the same time, and it's like, well, which one do I shoot? And the gun's just going back and forth, and it's not hitting either of them. And so when they're shooting at the incoming targets, and so it is a strategy of executives to overload the system. They call it pressurizing the system. And if you work in a matrix organization where you're assigned to multiple projects at the same time, um, that's not going to be a good situation because you're going to lose your focus and you're not going to be able to deliver. And so, between the task switching and working incredible amounts of overtime for extended periods of time, neither of those work. It's been proven over and over again, so I'm really confused as to why any company would continue to expect that of their employees. To me, that's just, I can't understand that at all.